Masakh Batra Daf Kuf Samach Bet Amud Aleph, second line. The last thing we mentioned was Rav Amram said that we don't learn anything from the last line of the document, and therefore the Sofer should use that line to uh, write a review, like a summary. Gemara says, Amar le Rav Nachman le Rav Amram. He asked, Minaha la, how do you know that? We don't learn anything from the last line. Amar le answered him, Taina Brisa says, Erhik et ha'idim shne shetin min haktav. If the signatures of the witnesses are distanced 2 lines from the rest of the document, the writing, pasul is pasul. Shita ahad kasher, but if it's 1 line away, it's kasher. So my shna shne shetin, what's the difference between two? Because maybe the guy would write something in between. So it must be, so how come one's okay? Maybe between that one space, that one line, he'll be able to write something as well. Therefore, we must see that the last line is useless, and therefore you can't learn from it. That's his proof. That's a good proof. Okay, you probably ask the question now. If document has 1.5 space between the text, what's the halacha? Is that a good document or not? Do we say that since technically it's 1 plus, it's considered 2 and therefore not good, or we say it's still not one, it's not fully 2 and therefore it's considered 1? Tashma, the witnesses are distance 2 lines. Pasul is pasul. Hashita mitzvah kasher sounds like 1.5 is kasher. Gemara says 1 second. In Masefer, but the next part of the Brayta, you can infer the opposite. Shita ahad kasher, 1 line is good. Shita ahad hud kasher, only 1 line is good. Shita ma'aseh pasul, 1.5 would be pasul. Ela mehad lakash, must be that you can't learn from this Brayta. You can't infer anything because the first and second cases you can infer the total opposite things. So, Mahav what's halacha? Tashma ring proof. The Tanya Brayta says, if the witnesses, the signatures were distance 2 lines from the text of the document, pasul, it's pasul. If it's less than 2 lines, kasher, it's kasher. So we see anything less than 2, even 1.5 is good. Next part of the Brayta, if there's 4 or 5 witnesses in the document, one of them was found to be disqualified, or pasul, witness or relative. All these people can't sign. Let's say one of those 4 or 5 were pasul. The testimony of the other witnesses can still be good through the rest. So even though testimony in Bedin, if there's one of them is pasul, they pasul all of them. In a document, it's okay. The Sofer filled that space between the text and signatures with relative as quote unquote as this witnesses kasher. Don't ask how can a blank space be pasul, but if you use that space for pasul edim, it would be kasher. How? Because we see similar concept elsewhere. The space of 3 tvachim in your sukkah without schach is pasul. Sikech pasul posel barba. But if you use pasul schach, only pasul schach, only pasul if you have it for 4 tefachim. So we see that if you have blank space, is 3. If you put 3 inches, 3 tvachim of pasul schach, it would be kasher. Only 4 tvachim of pasul schach is not kasher. So we see blank space can be worse than having something that's ineligible. Next question. Shne shitin sha'amru. We said 2 lines between the text and the signatures. That is pasul. Hen va'aviran or dilma hen velo aviran. Does that mean the space between the 2 lines and their space in between the lines as well? Or maybe it refers to them without the space. If the gap is 2 lines thick, then that's 2 lines of writing, but technically that by itself will be a little smaller without writing. 2 lines without the writing will be less because the letters go up and down. Mistavra makes sense to say the hen v'aviran is referring to them and the space. These are the hen v'aviran without the space. What would 1 line be without what would that gap be useful for? Meaning if you can't put 2 lines of writing into a small space, how would anybody change anything? Hen v'aviram must be that the gap has to be talking about that and the space. Maybe not. Okay. When we said it's 2 lines, that's referring to the signatures of witnesses, which is larger than the sofer. But Doktavi sofer is not referring to the 2 lines of a sofer, which is smaller. My time, why? Because when we're trying to put 2 lines to make sure no one falsifies something, he's not going to the sofer to falsify who writes smaller. He's going to someone else who writes bigger, and therefore we have to be more careful with the bigger space. How much space is it? Amarav Yitzhak bin Elazar kigon lecha lecha ze aga bazeh. Enough to have 2 lines with the word lecha on top of each other. The lamed goes up on the top of that line, and the chaf of that under it, so the lamed and the chaf go up and down. So you have 1 lamed going up on the first line, and the second line the chaf is going downward as well. So that's a pretty big space. It's first two lines of the actual text, and then four spaces because you have the line on top of the first lamed on the first line, and the chaf on the bottom of the second line. No, just enough for the top of a lamed above the top line and the bottom of the chaf on the bottom line, which is like three. Right? The two lines and three spaces because we were talking about licha on one line, the lamed is going on one line above, and the chaf's going on one line below. That's three. Rav Abba says, Baruch ben Levi b'shita hat. The amount of space for Baruch ben Levi on a single line. That's just two spaces because it's not hitting the space above for the lamed, and the small space of the chaf underneath it is only hitting those same two lines, and therefore you'd only need two spaces and one line of writing.